And when I submitted my notice to my boss, he was like, I don't think you should leave because I see you have a lot of potential here at Intel. I could see you as a VP here. And he's like, what would it take for you to stay? And I said, I probably need to make 200,000 base. And he's like, all right, I'll see you later.
Hey there, I'm Goli Kalkaran, and this is Lessons from a Quitter, where we believe that it's never too late to start over. No matter how much time or money you've spent getting to where you are, if ultimately you are not happy, then it's time to get out. If you're feeling stuck and you feel like there's gotta be more, there's gotta be a way to feel fulfilled and excited about what you do, then this is the podcast for you. Each week, I will sit down with an inspiring guest who quit their professional career in order to forge their own path and create a life that they love. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Lessons from a Quitter. I'm so excited to hang out with you today. We are doing another throwback to one of our first episodes. Literally, it was the first part of the first 3 that we launched on the first day. And it was with my good friend, Steve Trang. And the reason I wanted to rerun this episode is 1, I don't think a lot of you have heard it, and 2, because what Steve is doing is incredible. So if you stick around to the end, I had Steve come back and give us an update, because as you'll hear, when we started the show, he was just launching his own podcast called Real Estate Disruptors, and we'll talk about why he was starting it. And what has happened is just incredible. The podcast has blown up. He has become like a leading authority in wholesaling houses. He is now coaching people and growing a thriving coaching business, which he never really planned on. And it just really goes to the heart of what this podcast is about, which is just trying things and seeing what happens. Watching his journey has been awesome. And I think it's just such a cool update from where he was a year ago to where he is now. So make sure you stick around to the end to hear all the exciting things that Steve is up to. But before we dive in, I just wanted to quickly let you guys know that I opened up a small pilot program for all of you people that I talk to constantly that want to quit, that don't like your job, but have no idea what you should do. Or you already know what you want to do, but you just have no idea what the steps are. I know a lot of people feel stuck and overwhelmed, and I wanted to create a 12-week program where we go through and figure out what it is that you love, what it is you should be doing, and how to start creating a plan to go through it. So it'll be bi-weekly group coaching calls. There'll be accountability partners. There's a private Facebook group to answer all your questions. There's some video lessons and workbooks, and we will get to the nitty-gritty of what you should be doing and how you should be doing it so that in the next 3 months, you take massive action on your dreams and stop putting them off. So if this is something that you think you'd be interested in, you can check out more at quitterclub.com/group. We're closing the doors on Sunday, August 4th. So you only have a couple of days to get in. And because this is our first program, it's extremely limited in space. I want to make it like a really personal program where I'm really invested and know the ins and outs of each of your journeys, and I can help you and really get hands-on. So there aren't that many spaces, and we're offering it at like a huge discount for this first time. So if it's something that you want to do, I would suggest getting in quickly, and I hope to meet some of you in there. With that, we're going to jump into Steve's episode, and I will be back next week with a brand new episode for you. Today, we get to talk to Steve Trang. Steve started out his career earning his master's degree in electrical engineering and working as an engineer for Intel for 3.5 years. In 2007, after meeting a real estate broker he admired, Steve decided within 2 weeks to quit his engineering career and become a real estate agent. Since then, Steve has gone on to create Stunning Home Realty, a real estate brokerage in Phoenix, Arizona that he has grown to 60 licensed agents, selling over 100 houses a year and creating some of the top producing teams in the Valley. He's also gone on to start his own title company and develop a real estate app. Steve is not only committed to building his own successful real estate empire, but he also believes in helping others build theirs as well. He recently started a podcast called Real Estate Disruptors, where he interviews other real estate experts on how they're disrupting their markets. Today, we get to talk to Steve about how he knew it was time to quit, what he did when the market crashed and he almost had to go back to his engineering job, how he's built so many successful companies, and so much more. Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
In the interest of full disclosure, Steve and I have known each other for a long time. He's one of my husband's childhood friends, and we used to be neighbors for about 4 years, which was probably the best 4 years of your life, right?
Well, it's up there. Top 10.
I figured. But okay, so I really want to get into what you're doing and how you're kind of killing the game in real estate in Arizona. But before that, I sort of want to start from the beginning and get an understanding of what was it that sort of led you to become an engineer?
Well, engineer was, this is probably ridiculous to say, but that was the easy route.
Yeah.
That was, mom and dad raised us, they worked the butts off for us to go to school, get good grades and, be in honors classes. And, for a while I didn't get in honors classes. That was an embarrassment, for a short period of time. And then there was, your cousin got a full scholarship to ASU and then you got another cousin got a full scholarship to ASU. So you have to.
Right.
And so they specifically moved us to Chandler to be in a better school system. And that's where I met Paige and Javen and all the other really good guys. So in doing that, fortunately, hate to be stereotypical, but being Asian, I'm gifted at math. And that just led to engineering. And it was funny. I told Parvis, Paigeman's dad, a while ago that, he was one of the guys that convinced me to go to electrical because when I signed up at ASU, I was going to be software.
Oh, really?
And he said, you don't want to do software because electrical is harder and you can always do software later. But if you're software, you can never go electrical later. It's like, that makes sense.
That's interesting. Well, first of all, so just so people know, Pejman is my husband. He's also an electrical engineer and Parvis is his father. So you could have been killing it as a software engineer and he derailed your career.
I could be making like $500,000 in stock options in a year right now doing something crazy.
You could have started the next huge startup and he ruined that for you.
He did.
No, but I mean, I think a lot of that makes sense for a lot of us. The same thing, for me, where you have immigrant parents that sort of kind of funnel you into that track. And it's funny that you say it's the easy route. When I was kind of deciding not to do law, Pejman, my husband, had said, we were having a conversation. He's like, you kind of always taken the easy route. And I literally almost flipped over the table. I was like, what are you talking about? Law is so hard. But when I calmed down and listened to him, he was absolutely right in the sense that there was a path that was laid out. You just had to follow it. It wasn't something that you have to completely kind of reinvent the wheel and figure out on your own. You just, you know what tests to take and what classes to take and you go, you work and he's right. And I really just had to I'd made that my goal and I was going to be a lawyer and I just followed that along, never questioning it. And so, it is laughable to say it's the easy route to become an electrical engineer because it's obviously not easy. It's not simple. It's a lot of hard work, but it was a predictable path.
Yeah. Someone made the plans for you and you're just following it.
Yeah. So you went to ASU, you got your undergrad, and then did you also go to graduate school for engineering?
Yeah, I went to grad school. I went to UC San Diego. I signed up as a PhD student and, I don't know what's the word. I'm not sure. Is it grafting? What do the, gypsies do?
Oh, right. No, I know what you're talking about. I don't know the
grifting.
Word. Yeah.
So I signed up for the PhD program. So I know that I would get my grad school paid for. And I was like, if I like it, I'll stick around. But after a year, I was like, this is stupid. So I did enough to get my master's degree. Then I just went to go work.
When you were in either undergrad or master's, was there a time when you were in it where you're like, what am I doing? I don't like this.
I didn't hate it. It was actually intellectually satisfying, learning and competing because when you're at grad school, you have to compete at a high level. You can't make it to a university system in the United States unless you're a top performer from your country. So it was actually, it fed my competitive juices competing against the top from India, China, Korea, and so on. So that part was good. But when I realized how much work was involved and you had to essentially be the professor's, whipping boy.
Right.
I said, well, I'm a U.S. citizen. There's just no reason for that.
Right. So you didn't get your so you stopped the master's and you came back to Arizona and presumably worked as an engineer, I'm assuming.
Yep. 3.5 years.
3.5 years. So where did you work?
Intel.
Do you work tons of hours or is it predictable? And
yeah, so everyone at Intel, and I'm just going to sound like a complete douchebag here, but everyone at Intel is they're known as working as a sweatshop. So they would work It was totally normal to work 50, 60, 70 hours. And, you go home and you work even more. And Paige and I always joke, like, if you worked at Intel, it's because you hated your family. And so I was not that case. I would roll in at 9:30, and if you caught me after 5, like, you were pretty fortunate. And I thought, no one ever said anything, that I was getting away with it. But there was one time where my boss stopped by like 5:15. He's like, "Oh, you're here." I was like, "Oh, man." How long has he known?
Well, but you did get away with it, I guess, for 3.5 years.
Yeah. No one ever complained. I mean, the results were there.
Okay, so what happened that made you leave?
So the plan was always to eventually, after 7 years, getting the the pension, not pension, but all your options vested and so on.
Right.
Was to eventually quit and to become probably a contractor or start my own business. A contract, because you make like 50 to 100% more than you would make as just a general employee, and finding a wife with benefits, and then just kind of go on that route. So that was always the plan.
Right.
I always knew I wasn't going to be an engineer forever. I figured I'd give myself 7 years.
Okay.
And it wasn't even that long.
And then, so if you were to have like quit to be a contractor, you'd still be doing engineering, but just as contract work, right? Like that was your plan. Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a 9 to 5.
Okay. So what happened in 3.5 years when you decided this isn't the plan anymore?
So Paige and Javen, Brandon, and I were buying investment properties.
Which are also your friends. These are
right, same friends from Chandler, right?
Okay,
so from middle school. And so we were buying investment properties together, and we met this broker when we were purchasing, and I just talked to the guy. It's like, "Man, your life seems a lot more interesting than mine does. And tell me, how much do you make, and what do you do?" He's like, "Well, I make 100,000 easily. I train everyone around me to make 100,000." Which turned out later on was a complete lie, but that was inspiring. And I was like, "Okay, and what do you do?" He's like, "Well, I just talk to people." It's like, "What do you mean? Like, what does your typical day look like?" It's like, "There's no typical day." I said, "Well, I'm fascinated by this." And I asked him, "Well, what would it take for me to learn from you?" He said, "You just got to go get your real estate license." So literally from that conversation, I got my real estate license in 2.5 weeks.
Oh my God.
And as soon as I was licensed, I submitted my 2 weeks notice to Intel, and I just jumped in all in.
Oh my God. Okay. I have so many questions about this. Cause it's very interesting. What year was this, first of all?
2007.
So this was like at the height of the real estate market, where like people were making a ton of money. Okay. So, when you
things are starting to slow down.
Were you married at the time or no? Not yet.
No.
Okay. You weren't married.
We were, very close to, but we weren't.
But you weren't married. Okay.
No, Chow still had outs.
I was going to say, so like, did you tell your parents? I mean, you're going to become a real estate, like what was this? Not only the evolution within yourself, but like telling people that, "Hey, I'm going to quit my job as an engineer and I'm going to go become a real estate agent." How did that go?
So everyone thought I was an idiot, which is normal for when you're trying to become an entrepreneur.
Right.
But there was only 2 people that really were supportive of it. One was Chow, my wife, and then the other was Pageman. And Pageman was the only one that said, if you don't do that, you're going to regret it. So, you should go for it, because worst case, you just go back and get your job.
And Pageman's responsible for me quitting too. We should make him like a motivational coach.
Yeah, no, he's good. He's good at motivating. He's just lousy at being a friend, husband probably.
So it's nice that Zhao, your future wife, was supportive. But what did your parents say when you told them?
"You're stupid. Why would you leave a stable ground?" Like, I had just gotten like the biggest raise. I mean, looking back now, it's not as much money, but I was making. So when I quit, I literally got 3 weeks before, I got a 23% raise.
Oh wow!
I was making 85,000 at that point base. Mm-hmm. With stock options, benefits, and everything, it could have got to 115, whatever.
Right.
But and when I submitted my notice to my boss, he was like, "Well, I don't think you should leave, because I see you have a lot of potential here at Intel. I could see you as a VP here one day." And he's like, "What would it take for you to stay?" And I said, "I probably need to make 200,000 base." And he's like, "All right, I'll see you later." But I'm still in contact with him. I mean, he's a good guy.
Yeah. This is a very, I think, unique story. A lot of people make the jump. I don't think they make it that quickly. And I think there's a lot more doubt. So like, how did you kind of push past that doubt? Or did you have a time when you thought like, "Hey, this is kind of crazy. I shouldn't be doing this"?
No. I mean, I guess there's a little bit, but I've always had, and this about me, I have an amount of irrational confidence.
I do know this about you.
So like, and there was Brendan Burchard, who's someone I started following recently. What he says is real confidence is knowing that you'll figure it out. And I've always had that about me. Even, there's no reason for me to think I could do something and I'll be able to do it. And like, for example, like golfing, I actually quit it because of cognitive dissonance. I just expected to be amazing at it, and it just was not the case.
And I think that you said, let's say you tried this for a year or two and it didn't work out, like, could you just reasonably go back and get a job as an engineer? Or would they say like, oh, you've been out of the field because in law, sometimes it's difficult to go back after a couple of years, but I don't know, like, was there like, you had that safety net where you could just go back and be an engineer?
Well, so I actually did try to exercise that safety net because it was really bad in 2008, 2009. So I actually did go back.
Oh, really?
And say, hey, is the job still available? And they said that, they said no, but it wasn't because of me. It was because like the economy was so bad. Right. If you remember, they're like, we just don't have the resources to hire anybody. I was like, okay, well, let me know if anything changes.
Right.
And I just kept, humming along, and I'm glad they said no.
Well, okay, I'd love to hear more about that. So you started in real estate in 2007, and this was this broker that you met. So were you working for him originally?
Yeah, I worked at his brokerage. So he was the owner of the brokerage, and it was basically me and him for the longest time. Like, nobody was selling real estate at that time. We kept pushing forward. There were no options, there was no choice. So you had to keep hustling. And there was, I'll be honest, it was tumultuous, right? In the marriage, there's the number one reason why people break up in marriages is finances. And there was that time. So, but there was no choice. You got to keep going. And so eventually I got into short sales, and then I got an REO, foreclosure properties. And then as things changed, I continued to develop myself. And I wasn't doing a whole lot of personal development. I did some, but I became kind of obsessed with it. I want to say around 2010, 2011.
How sort of did you get into that? And you still do a lot with coaches and mastermind groups. And so kind of tell us how that has shaped what you're doing now.
Well, I think, once your eyes kind of open to it, you start looking at, what are you into? What are you learning? And that conversation just led to more, like what they're into. And it still happens today. There's one guy in town who's just, blowing me away. He's one of the top 10 agents in the Valley. And I talk to him like, every other month. In fact, he's going to be on my podcast in about a month. Like, hey, what are you learning? What are you doing? And we continue to push each other and challenge each other. Which
is like a good, I think, trick or tip. I think a lot of times people are scared to reach out to people that are kind of ahead of them and what they want to do. And it's surprising to see how many people are willing to help and like really open to talk to you. And you think like, oh, this person's killing it. Like they don't want to waste their time. But a lot of times if you just reach out, they're willing to kind of like share what they're doing and how they're doing. And that's like the best way to kind of learn and go on that same path.
Yeah, 100%. You'll find that the guys there at the top are givers. They wouldn't be there if they weren't givers.
Right.
Like it's hard to last if you're not a giver.
Hey guys, we'll get back to the episode in 1 second. But if you're in the Southern California area on August 15th, I want you to join us for our first ever live event. It is going to be awesome. We're going to do a live recording with 4 of our incredible past guests, including Sheena Chang, Pai Jirsa, Lori Rowan, and Sarah Rezvanpur Rose. We're going to have a coaching session from Elena Deutsch. We're going to have food and drinks and networking, and you get to meet me, which could be a good or bad thing. It's going to be pretty fun, and I would love to see you all there. I would love to meet you all. So join us. You can go to quitterclub.com/event to buy your tickets. I hope to see you all there. And with that, let's jump back into the episode. Another thing I find interesting with what you did with real estate is you didn't go in just kind of like, I want to be a real estate agent. I'm going to sell houses. Like you were saying earlier, your entrepreneurial spirit, like this became a business for you. And I would love to know more about how you've grown it. But before we kind of get into that, like, did you have an entrepreneurial spirit before you even like kind of went into engineering? Or
So yeah, one of my favorite books is Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh. And I feel like a lot of the stuff in there is kind of like how I was. So I was, that kid that sold candy in school. I remember I got in trouble in 8th grade because I would go buy those limon packets at the Mexican stores.
Yeah.
And I would buy them for $0.05 each. And I would sell them for $0.25 each.
Right.
And you can't get those kinds of margins anymore. It'd be illegal. But, I got in trouble in school for selling things. And I think, let's see, like in 4th grade, I remember I got in trouble because I would answer, around the world, the math thing.
Yeah.
And if you won, you got like a sucker, right? And I would sell it for $1.
And you got in trouble for that?
Well, yeah. They're like, I do this to inspire the kids, not for you to make money.
Right. I guess fair enough, but I don't know why they try to stifle the entrepreneurial spirit in school. Okay, so you were doing that, and so, but I mean, you said that you guys were buying real estate with your friends, and so you guys clearly had some kind of entrepreneurial spirit. But
yeah, I mean, that was our exit strategy, was to have enough retirement properties to passive income to pay for everything else. I mean, obviously that went to shambles, but that was the plan.
But that's even interesting that you guys, I mean, how old were you guys when you started that?
Let's see. So when I moved back here, I was 24, 25.
Yeah. I mean, you don't see a lot of 24, 25-year-olds thinking about the retirement strategy. Okay. So you get your real estate license and you're kind of plowing through. And then how do you get to where you are now, where you have this brokerage that has 51 licensed agents and you're selling, 100 houses a year and creating like top producing teams? Like how does that happen over the years?
When I first started, I struggled a lot. I mean, I racked up a lot of credit card debt, and I tried everything. They call it shiny object syndrome.
Right.
So it's like, hey, this will help you get more deals. Okay, I'll pay for it. And there was a lot of stuff out there that didn't work. And then after that, I got into short sales because that's where the market was, and I became the short sale expert because they were saying, the riches are in the niches. So I would advertise that I was the short sale expert. And then after that, I got into foreclosures. I was chasing the bank listings, and I was able to land a couple of those through sheer good luck. I mean, somebody was stealing, like one of the other agents was stealing money. I don't know why. If you're getting all these bank properties, he got fired, and they're like, hey, we need somebody, and they're like, hey, you're good enough. It wasn't like qualified or whatever. It's like, yeah, I wasn't next in line. I didn't do all those things. They're like, we just fired this guy. You're here. You get the job. So that was very, very fortunate. And then as the foreclosure started winding down, I kind of see that I needed to change something because obviously what I've been doing will not continue to work. And so I was investigating a couple of different coaching programs. There's Brian Buffini, Mike Ferry, Craig Proctor. Those are some of the biggest ones. And
were they coaching programs specifically for real estate?
For real estate.
Okay.
Yeah. And then there's a guy in town, Russell Hsieh, who's a monster. He's a behemoth in the business. And I reached out to him. I was like, hey, Russell, can I buy you lunch? And he said yes. And then we sat down. I said, hey, this is where my business is at. I don't think foreclosures are going to stick around much longer. I need to make a shift. Here are the things I'm looking at. What do you recommend? And he said, I know 2 people that are doing very well with Craig Proctor, so you should go do that route. So I did. And once I started doing that, I realized that I wasn't getting any more value from my own broker. So I said, well, I'm going to open my own brokerage. And when I opened my own brokerage, it was purely for selfish reasons. It was because I didn't want to pay a split anymore. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to have anyone to approve my advertising. And so I did that. And in hindsight, it's not, you don't get to keep more money. You just pay in other ways.
Right.
But as I was doing it, I saw, a bunch of other people were saying, I like what you're doing over there. I'd like to join you. And so we grew gradually, about an agent a month, consistently, organically. So we're at 60 as of last week. And it's just, I think my obsession with personal development helps the other agents around me. It attracts them to push them to do what they can do at a higher level.
One of the things I find really interesting about that is the coaching that you were talking about. There are people that genuinely have done something and gotten to some place of success and are now helping people along the way, and like in every area. So it's so interesting that like if there's an area that you want to be in, you can find someone that's done that is willing to help you. And yeah, you might have to pay for it, but it'll help. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I don't know. It is your experience that it sort of helps the learning curve. So you save, 2 to 3 or 5 years.
Absolutely. No, there is a tremendous ROI every time. Yeah. I mean, like, for example, the guy I was talking about, who's kicking my ass and, we still talk. He's in that same coaching program that I signed up for, Craig Proctor, back in 2010, 2011.
Right.
That's how I met him.
Yeah. And I think that's another interesting thing is a lot of these top performers also still have coaches. I think a lot of people think that it's just people like selling to people that haven't done anything. But once you start getting into a lot of, especially like in business and entrepreneurship, anybody that is killing their field has some kind of executive coach, some kind of, mindset coach, whatever it is, whatever they need help with to like help them get to the next level, or mastermind groups. I know that's like a huge thing. I think you do mastermind groups as well, right?
I'm in multiple mastermind groups. Yes. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I think that's just like and for people that don't know, mastermind groups is like typically a group of, however many people, 5, 10 people that meet either weekly, monthly, and you help each other with your business, basically.
Yep. Yeah. So they just talk about whatever challenges they're having and or what's working for them, and they just share it openly to their competitors.
And so you're saying, so now you guys are 60 agents at your brokerage, which is incredible. And so do you on the day-to-day still like sell homes, like act as a real estate agent, or do you run the brokerage or?
So right now I don't work with a lot of clients. I still work with past clients, but I don't work with a whole lot of clients. Really more I have my team that services them.
Okay.
And, you know, it's kind of ridiculous now, but I feel like my team can do a better job than I can just because I'm not as connected anymore. There was one time I showed a property, this was a couple of years ago, to Chow's aunt. They were in town. They wanted to buy a property and I opened the wrong house. It was the same street number, wrong street. And Chow was like, this is what happens when you sit behind the desk.
Yeah.
It was true.
So you embarrassed your wife in front of her family. Perfect.
Yep.
I'm sure that happens a lot. She's pretty much used to that.
She's used to it.
Okay. So now just overall, would you say that your career now, do you work more or less than, let's say, if you were an engineer at this point?
I would probably be working more hours as an engineer now, just because I think by this time in my career, I would have been upper management, I would think. So I would have been more responsible.
Yeah.
I would have a lot more responsibilities. I was a grunt when I was working back then. So that's why I could get away working 25, 30 hours a week.
Right.
But once you're a manager, there's no hiding.
Yeah. And in addition to the brokerage, correct me if I'm wrong, but you also started a title company? Yeah.
So I have like so many responsibilities right now. So I own a brokerage. I run my team. I got a title agency. I got that app out now.
What app?
OfferFast.
Oh, what's that? Tell me about that.
It's an app. It's basically an MLS for wholesalers.
Oh, how cool. How did you develop an app?
I didn't. I had my family did it. My family do it. But it was Wayne's. I don't know if you remember my cousin Wayne. It was his idea. And I was like, well, I was actually going to do something just like it. Mm-hmm. So we might as well collaborate on it together. Very cool. And so we're the visionaries. And then we got a few programmers that are working on it for Sweat Equity. So we got that. And then let's see what else is there. And I'm doing this whole podcast thing. And
oh, yeah. So you just started a podcast and it's called Real Estate Disruptors, right?
Yep.
And so what's the podcast about?
So we have this avatar, this niche of, I think guys probably around the age between 23 and 38, people that are running successful real estate teams that want to learn how to flip properties or they're flipping properties and they want to learn how to get into real estate. And this is kind of the niche I fell into. It's something I've always done, but other people want to do the same thing. So I'm kind of leading that movement. Cool. So it's already people that are sort of in this, in the real estate world. Like that's what it's targeted towards. Right. Someone's already doing it. Someone that's already successful. So the people that are on a show are already crushing it. And then people that are listening to the show are people that, they're either got regular jobs or they're just getting started and they want to see what the end result can be. Right. Okay. And so where can people find your podcast? If they just go to realestatedisruptors.com, all the information's there. That's where I'm slaving the last few nights getting that kind of up and running. But I basically just copied Pat Flynn's website. And so if people don't know, Pat Flynn has a very popular podcast called Smart Passive Income. And it's all about like having passive income streams and coming up with kind of side hustles. Very cool. And so, I mean, you're clearly very busy. A lot of times it's easy to like look at somebody that's, quote unquote, I don't know, successful in whatever field you're at. And it's kind of, sometimes it becomes really overwhelming because you see how many things they're doing and it's like, oh God, this guy's crushing it and he's doing, this many deals and he has this and he has a podcast and stuff. But it's like none of that happens unless you take that first step, right? I mean, it's not like you started out with a title company and a brokerage and, you started out working for another guy as a real estate agent to learn the craft. And I think that's been my takeaway in my own personal experience. And I think a lot of what stops people from taking a leap or trying something new is because they think like, I could never be like that. But it's like, it's just normal people that took step after step. Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's only two things that are required, I think, to be successful. And I think you got to be learning based and you have to have a good work ethic. I think after that, everything else, will fall into place. So like, Zig Ziglar says, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Yeah. And then I wouldn't be able to do any of this if it weren't for Summer, my right-hand person. She's basically my COO. And then Chow, who's been incredibly supportive through all this craziness. I mean, she told me a few times, like, hey, we're done starting businesses this year, right? I love that it's this year. It's not like we're done starting over. She knows you well enough that she's like, can we just stop for a couple months? Right. Yeah. So, but without them, it wouldn't work. because there's a lot of, personal sacrifice. There's a lot of times that you're working late, that you can't do stuff that you want to do because that's the only way it's going to get done.
Right. Well, that's, very inspiring. And I don't know if you have any advice or any books that you recommend to people that are maybe in, where you were, as an engineer, kind of in a day job that they don't like, that they don't know what the next step is. They don't know what else they would do, but they're not happy. Anything you can offer.
I think the first step is Darren Daily. I think that's great for people that are kind of thinking about taking a leap. And I think the E-Myth Revisited is great if you think that you're going to do this because your boss is an idiot and you can do a better job. I think that kind of helps you get the right mindset.
Right.
To understand running a business is different than, running a kitchen or whatever. It's just two different things.
Right.
But I think a lot of things that make people successful, it'll make them successful in any industry. So really, you just need to find other people that are successful entrepreneurs. They don't necessarily need to be in your field.
Oh, interesting. So just to learn kind of the traits of what they're doing can help you, even if it's in a different field.
Yeah, because you could ask them this is a challenge I'm having. They can direct you to the right book or the right person. They might know someone that's experienced that challenge for their own business, or they might know someone in that business. Either way, they can help you.
Okay, well, why don't you tell people where they can find you or, the brokerage, or if people want to reach out?
Yeah, so I think the best thing, and I don't have the subscribing thing yet up and running yet, but, you can follow me on realestatedisruptors.com. I got links to my Facebook videos and all my previous interviews, or you can look me up on stevetrang.com. That's my traditional real estate site. But the disruptors thing is the movement I'm creating, and there's a lot of people that are really excited about it, and I'm really excited about it because I think I can make a much more positive impact through that than selling houses.
Perfect. Well, I'm excited to see where you take it. Thank you so much for being on the show, Steve. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Bye. Welcome back, Steve. I'm so excited to have you on and talk about all the exciting things that have happened in the last year since we've talked to you.
I'm excited to be on it. Thank you very much for, reaching back out.
No problem. And so we heard your story of how you went from engineer to real estate agent and how you added on a bunch of different titles, broker and a title company, and you were building an app the last time we talked. But one of the coolest things that I've watched in your journey in this last year that I really wanted to talk about is your podcast. So when we started, you were just launching your podcast. So can you tell us why you even wanted to add in a podcast when you were kind of just doing the real estate thing and clearly had a thriving business at the time?
Yeah, it's funny. When I started the podcast, I wouldn't say I necessarily had a clear vision, but I know one of my objectives was to help develop, a brand where I could help push the app that we were developing at the time. And it's still in development. But, I was like, man, it'd be really cool if I can get this app out there. And then it'd be a nice bonus too if maybe this turned into coaching or something. But that wasn't on the forefront. That was kind of hey, it'd be a nice bonus.
Right. So you were kind of thinking that the podcast would help you create brand awareness and create an audience so that when you launched your app, then you'd have somebody to launch to, basically.
Exactly.
And remind us what the app is.
So the app is is basically an MLS for off-market properties. Wholesaling, something I was doing passively up until the last year. And there's no great system in place for wholesalers to communicate with each other. So the app is a marketplace for everyone to post their property so that they can buy and sell there without being a licensed realtor.
And can you briefly describe what wholesaling is? Because I'm not sure if everybody knows that market.
So wholesaling is buying a property at below market. So, around 70%, 65 to 85% of market value. And it's selling it to typically a flipper or an investor that's buying to hold for rental properties that's willing to pay not retail. They want a discount, but they don't need as steep of a discount. So it's the arbitrage or the difference between what the wholesaler ties the property up from the homeowner and what they're able to sell it to an investor. All those late night TV, buy a house with no money down programs. That's what this is. It is a real thing, but it's definitely become more popular recently.
Is that how you find the wholesale houses? You go directly to people that want to sell their house, quickly, and you offer them basically below market for giving them cash, right then?
Yeah, it's no different than really like a pawn shop, right? It's like a pawn shop for real estate.
Got it.
If someone needs money now and they're willing to take a discount, and in pawn shops, I think you get like 30 to 40%. I think if you go to like sell gold,
Right.
you're getting like 25% of what it's worth.
Yeah.
Houses, we pay like 70%, but 30% discount is a very massive discount when we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right. And so when you were saying that when you started the podcast, you were doing wholesaling kind of on the side while you were doing like the traditional real estate stuff just for yourself, right?
For myself, yeah.
When you originally started the podcast, was it focused on wholesaling or was it focused on just real estate as a general topic?
So the vision was to do 50% traditional and 50% investor. But, that was the vision. But I didn't really know what the audience wanted.
Right.
Part of it is just starting it and then figuring it out. And so what we found going through analytics is that people don't give a crap about traditional real estate, but they love, the stories of these wholesalers and where they get their business from, how they came to be where they are. And so that's what people want. And it's what we deliver because I'm interested in it too. And there's no shortage of people right now, it appears, that are having success in this industry.
Okay, so give us a little update of what happened. So clearly you read your audience and you're now focused fully on wholesaling, but give us a little snapshot of what happened in this year of you launching this podcast.
Well, it's kind of crazy. In starting, I think I had like 4 or 5 episodes when you and I first talked. The plan was, let's just record 10 episodes, and if it sucks, who cares, right?
Right.
No one would even know about it if it was a failure, right? So, but if it takes off, then great. So we did it, and I've had unbelievable fun, excitement, and pleasure in doing this. And some of the coolest things was I was invited to speak at a wholesaling event back in March. It was the biggest wholesaling event ever, over 1,000 people. And I got to share a stage with big old Gary V.
That's amazing.
And that's not something that you can plan for. It's like, man, in 12 months from now, I'm going to share a stage with Gary V. So there's that.
From my view, seeing what you've created, it's become a really big podcast in your niche. And can you tell us the name of your podcast so if anyone wants to check it out?
Yeah, it's Real Estate Disruptors.
Yeah, and you have guests that have to be in person, that fly into Arizona from all over the country to be on your show. So it's become this really, huge thing. So as we talk about what you've kind of gotten out of it, but, did you ever expect it to blow up like this?
No, I did not. I really was like, well, let me start with the Phoenix market. And, it's easy because I know everyone, or I know a lot of people here. Let's start with the Phoenix market. And then we'll stay with that as long as we can. And hopefully people will be willing to fly in. But, that's just kind of like the hope. That wasn't like, steadfast, we're going to do this. But then I had a guest come on and he's like, man, this is really cool. I like this Larry King style versus everyone's, face-to-face on YouTube kind of situation. He's like, you gotta stand this line. You got to fight it. You don't let anyone, talk you off of it. So I held the line, and I've had guests that were like, yeah, I want to get a show. I tell them, well, you got to be in town. You got to fly into Phoenix. And they're like, oh, well, I'm not interested. So I had one particular guest who said no twice. But then the third time was like, okay, it's worth it. Because we kind of become this, like something to put on your resume.
That's amazing. That is unbelievable. This is like the whole point of the podcast. And I really want to highlight, that's why I wanted to highlight this, is that I think I mentioned in the earlier podcast that we did that I've known you for a number of years. And I think what you do better than anybody else is really just try things, try them and not care if you fail, and try dozens of tactics and see what works. And I think that for most of us, we stop ourselves because we're so afraid to fail. And then it's like your fear of failure is also holding you from success because you can't succeed without, trying a bunch of stuff. So I just love that this started out as just kind of like a side project to create some brand recognition and has now become huge. And you were saying that you were hoping that it turns into coaching, and it has indeed turned into you really mentoring and coaching a lot of people in the wholesale community, right?
Yeah. So as of today, we have 13 students, and we launched our coaching program literally a month and a half ago.
That's amazing.
Not even that long ago. So we got 13 students right now. But on top of having that, my brokerage just doubled in size. So we had 55 agents last year. And now we're at like 110.
Oh my God. And is that from the podcast, you think?
It's a side effect. Like, we become a brand, right? So we have the podcast. One of the goals from the podcast is to create some sort of branding.
Right.
And so I've become known in the community as a wholesale guy. But it's funny. I have one of my top agents, one of the guys that's been with me from the beginning. He's like, it's really interesting to look at what's happened to you since you started this podcast, because you're still the same person that's been my coach for the last 5 years. But now the problem is everyone else knows about you too. So like at the time, I was the secret.
Right. Yeah. You were the best kept secret that is now out. That's incredible. And so you have 13 students, and how much of your business now is the coaching versus like the real estate?
If we talk about revenue, it wouldn't be a large percentage. But the great thing about coaching, I mean, you see this in the information marketing space, is that it's a low overhead business. So the great thing about the coaching is that, it's not 100% profit, but it's pretty darn high. Right. Compared to like running my traditional business, I'm out 50 grand a month, and man, I hope I get 50 grand in revenue. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. With salaries and stuff. That's just amazing. So what takeaways? I mean, you've given a lot, but I think from this experiment in this last year, seeing what this has done with your business and just with like a new arm to your business, what advice do you have for people that are still kind of stuck in like doing the traditional things and fearing putting themselves out there?
I think the biggest thing is still taking action. It's massive action. It's something that I've been blessed that I'm willing to try new things without fear. I may have said this in the podcast before, like there's something technically wrong with me, I think, that I don't have fear. I'm not afraid, because what's the worst thing that could happen, is that it's a failure. I'm not investing a lot of money into it, just investing time. But you and I are in the same Facebook group that you recommended that I joined, Jared Easley's group. And there was something I said to somebody, and he's like, wow, that really means a lot. And it was that perfect people have to sit on the sidelines to watch people like you and me succeed.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a great, great quote.
Yeah. Because if you're waiting for it to be perfect, guess what? It's never going to be perfect.
Absolutely. And it's so funny because I want to say, I don't know, like, because I'm not the type of person that's not afraid. I actually was afraid kind of my whole life of failing. I always wanted to succeed. And it's funny that once you put yourself out there, though, like with practice, you start caring less, but you also start realizing, there's these quotes that like nobody that's doing more than you is going to criticize you. You start realizing the people that are judging and stuff are just on the sidelines. And it's like, okay, it doesn't hold as much weight once you're like in the arena actually fighting. And so I think it's hard when you're standing on the sideline because you see what everyone else is judging and you don't want to be that. But it's not as bad as, I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, but it's so freeing too.
Totally.
Is that when you don't have to worry about what everyone else thinks.
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest part is like, it just frees you up to like, it's funny that I was the type of person that was always like wanted to know exactly what I was going to do and know a plan. And now not only do I not know, like it's exciting to me because it's exciting to think of all the possibilities and everything I could try. And like, who knows what I'll be doing in 5 years, and I think that's such a liberating feeling to have.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years. I have no idea, right? But I know I'm surrounded by the people that will push me and challenge me, and then we can lean on one another. So that's the other great thing, too, in taking action, is that you get to surround yourself with people that are on the leading edge. So there's even less fear because you guys all have each other's backs.
Right, absolutely. Steve, it's so inspirational. I love what you're doing. Thank you so much for coming back on. I think people can learn so much from you. Tell everyone where they can find you. Where's the best place to connect with you?
Instagram is really the best place to get a hold of me. So it's just steve.trang, steve.trang. That's, I don't know why, but for me, that's the spot where I am most responsive. Facebook's pretty horrible. Email is a black hole. Like, you want to get lost, send me an email. But Instagram is the best way to get hold of me.
Perfect. I will link to that in the show notes. Thank you again, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I can't tell you how much it means to me. If you liked the podcast, please rate and review us on iTunes. It'll help other people find the show. If you want to connect or reach out, follow along on Instagram and Facebook at Lessons from a Quitter and on Twitter at Quitter Podcast. I would love to hear from you guys. and I'll see you on the next episode.